Okay, this video is going to be a framework for today, modern life, and a completely different way to look at relationships. I'm going to talk about it more as man and woman. I know there's a lot of other elements, but the same principles will apply to everything that's happening in our world. And the framework is set up to stop the division and start looking at things from a growth standpoint, a personal growth standpoint, and rather looking at it from a authentic expansion. So an expansion into our authentic selves versus the idea of growth, which is being sold, self-help, in the spiritual community. You need to grow, you need to grow, you need to grow. So I'm going to put a kibosh on the growth with this. First, I'll outline the framework. And the framework would be for a male-female relationship and how we relate. So the framework is based upon the elements of the feminine and the masculine. And in this case, the idea that the masculine holds structure while the feminine is the chaos, basically. And how that shows up is just in the element of having so many other emotions, so much more going on. So the idea is that the element of the feminine is the nature of growth and expansion in the world, and the masculine is the structure that builds and holds the frame for these new ideas to be built in the world. And so that's the structure of this idea. And it would be based upon the man in the relationship. His duty is to be able to hold space, hold emotional support for the female. And the way that he does this is by allowing all of these emotions and different personalities that are going to arise from these emotions to be recognized and acknowledged in a loving way. So this basically puts the idea that it's the man's job and responsibility to work on his vulnerabilities in order to hold this loving space. So it's not argumentative, it isn't judgmental, it isn't trying to fix the woman. It's simply to shine light. And there'll be a distinction between validation and recognition. And in this case, the framework is the man holds recognition, never validation. The woman, on the other hand, has all of these aspects, all of these personalities that she brings with her to the table. And her responsibilities then are not to get caught up in the personalities that are the ones that are the destructive, have a destructive nature to them. And that's the idea of the masculine holding the structure, so the woman can explore all of these other personalities, but this allows her to know where her vulnerabilities are within this framework. So how does this play out? Well, this is like, how did we get so separated? Why is there this gender divide? Like, we have, women can do whatever a man can do. We have all of these arguments going back and forth, but I'm going to put the attention on self-improvement and growth. And this is both in, regular self-improvement, self-help kind of stuff, but it's also in the spiritual stuff, heal to grow, grow concepts, get connected to concepts, all of these things. And this is where I'm pointing the attention of where the fracture is because we're being sold the idea of performing for each other rather than being our authentic selves in the world. So what's happening within this is the woman is being is maybe has, let's just use an example, the woman goes into relationships and it doesn't work out, so the idea is to go grow in order to find herself within a relationship, but we can see that this is becoming more difficult and more difficult, and the reason is, I'm pointing the attention to the aesthetics. We get into this argument about who the money, what healing modalities people are taking, what shiny concepts people are attaching this growth to. The growth then for the woman is actually the suppression of certain personalities, because in the feminine, the idea is the feminine comes in chaotic. It is the flowering of new ideas. So with it is this idea of the woman that it has this chaos that is happening, because these are emotions that, like, she can't get under control, or it feels like in our culture she can't get them under control. And that's where the structure of the masculine comes in. The masculine comes in to hold structure and build. And so we're going to go upon those ideas, and if that doesn't resonate with you, then the rest of this is not going to make any sense. I'm not interested in having an argument about this. This is just an idea of creating a framework to push ourselves and expand ourselves into our authentic selves, rather than following these fragments, which are psychological, philosophical, spiritual tools like astrology and a gazillion different shiny objects, and we're just going to say all of those things are the aesthetics. And that is what I'm saying we're arguing about. And that's why this is so difficult to bring ourselves together to create this new world that we want to be in, because the woman then comes in and says, okay, I can't find a man, so I've got to build structure. The way that she builds structure is to actually suppress personalities, in order for her to build structure, to build a life, to be independent. Whereas the man is having trouble in our culture because they're trying to play they're trying to play the part of the woman as well, where they're needing validation for their feelings. They're in response to the chaotic nature of the growth, and men go out and they try to grow, they try to appease the woman, but still it seems like we can't get that divide, and it's because we are trying to grow ourselves when we don't need to grow at all. That's the whole idea of this, that we are meant to expand into our authentic selves. So for the woman, that is the authentic self, is to play in the world, but yet then point and shine light on her vulnerabilities. We are going to go back to the human element that each of us is holding and connected to traumas, whatever we want to say, embedded in us. And those would be our vulnerabilities. So both sides need to work on their vulnerabilities. But within this framework, the responsibility is what is the beautiful part. It is meant to be expansive so that both people grow into their authentic selves together. We stop the noise of getting caught up in the arguments around the aesthetics. What's the right way to do it? Are you doing the right kind of healing? Are you taking the right path? Are you following the right spiritual tools? Blah, 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 blah. It's the noise. It's the chaos. So so the division is us divided into fragmented realities, where we will go into a psychological path. We then create a performance art for that, and we consider that whatever psychological path we're on, we consider that our growth, and that actually becomes our identity, and then we're trying to sell an identity rather than selling our authentic self, or becoming our authentic self. So the whole idea of this is to get out of growth altogether and look to expand ourselves into our authentic expression, meaning that we don't need to grow at all. We need to act. We're not a problem to solve. We stuff. that needs to be dissolved. So instead of going back to the past to do all this work, what we're actually doing is using this framework in order to go forward. So so the relationship then is simply meant to go forward, and as the relationship goes forward, what will happen is the vulnerabilities for both parties are going to come up. And that's the beautiful part, is that we can recognize by how this framework is structured. And how it is structured is the man's duty then is, within the framework, is to give witness to the feminine. So this allows the feminine, the female, to have all the different personalities, to speak from all the different personalities. And so the man's job then is to recognize the words that will come from any of these emotions, because they're not always personal. Sometimes it's just an exploration. That's the whole idea of these personalities. They're just exploring things. But what's happening in our culture is men get caught up, and then they need validation. And so that we just take that off the table, as to where the man is simply able to hold stature, to allow the woman to voice, from words coming from an emotion, and then the man, from a stoic, loving perspective and disposition, can repeat back and recognize those words. And this is where we get caught up, is in the validation. For the woman, the personalities where she holds her vulnerabilities, she's actually going to try to get the man to validate those. And he can't. He doesn't know what has happened in her past. He doesn't know how to validate. Nobody can validate anybody's perspective. So the man simply recognizes if the woman is expressing from anger or sadness, something, the man's job is to not take it personally. If he does take it personally, that's his vulnerabilities to look at for himself, to strip away what he needs to dissolve on his path. And for the woman, then the idea for the woman is she's then gets this structure of the framework, which is, this is the male's role, this is the female's role. The female's role is to explore, expand into these personalities. The thing is the personalities that she'll want to grow from are the same ones that she will repress in order to appease the culture, to appease the idea of growing. And so within this framework, this allows this woman to recognize where these vulnerabilities are, because she's going to need validation. And that's the thing, is the man's not there to validate. The man is there to simply repeat back the words that he heard her speak from that sense. And then the woman then knows where her vulnerabilities lie, and then it is her knowing with the framework, this is something that I need to work on. I'm not going to make the male into a project. This is about getting out of performance and getting into authentic relating with one another. So that's how you start the relationship, is by defining this basis. This is the role that I want to play. I want to play as the man, the one that holds structure. And when it's my turn, when things feel like it's personal, that's when I need to find the vulnerabilities in me. That is my responsibility, to sit with that vulnerability and to allow it to dissolve, whatever it is that I'm carrying from my past, to dissolve, so that I can get back into the conversation. When the woman says the words, he's able to simply repeat the words back, not not projected words, just giving recognition and witness to the words that came out. And that is the key, that we are recognizing and not validating. And that is where the growth thing is the difficult part. This is why we create chaos when we do this, is because we are trying to make projects out of the other people. So the idea is expansion and getting away from the idea that we need to grow at all. So what it also does is it gets us out of our past. We're not trying to figure out what our traumas are. We're not trying to say, oh, it's because of this last relationship. It's because of this. It's how I was treated as a child, blah, blah, blah. Those are things that we can never figure out. You can spend your whole life in a victimized state of mind trying to pin down what happened in the past. This is a moving forward. This is a moving upward way of going. So as you reach, what is it? You then know when your vulnerabilities come up, you recognize this is my responsibility. This is my responsibility to take this on. This is me sitting with my own stuff. So if you want to call it healing, you can call it healing. But it also takes the nature of accounting according to all the aesthetics that we have. How much love is being sold. What does love look like? That's just another ego game. That's another survival tactic. So anyway, this is just the beginning of an idea that's growing, and we need these kind of ideas that grow in this world so we can bring ourselves back together. But it also points our attention. What is happening in our culture as we're trying to grow? We grow apart. And then we're just performing from one another instead of from the growth that we make. So a woman might go into a growth pattern, but she takes away all the personalities that are beautiful that the man actually would live or die for. And that's the thing is that is the gift that's given from this framework, is that if you follow the framework, that what the man, for doing his responsibility, is he gets to choose the personality that he loves the most within the woman, and then the woman gets to gift that personality back to him. That's where a man will live or die for. That's what he would live or die for, is that the beautiful personality that the woman brings. And what does the woman bring? She then gets the structure in order to now not have to account for all the different emotions that she's going in. She doesn't have to emotionally regulate all the time. She has the safe space within the framework of the relationship to be free to bring in the new into the world, to have a container to hold the chaos, while being held. And both people are then living off of that energy. They're then creating and growing from the foundation of this union, and it's beautiful.